I first started at BNI, when I used to tip up at 5 to 7 when we were at Hampstead House, and that was with a grudge. Hamish had managed to persuade me to come along to the meetings, and I really didn't want to be there. Anything before 8 o'clock is silly o'clock in my book. Last week was 4 o'clock every day. It was crazy. Anyway, Charlie has very kindly reminded me this morning that today is my treat, so I thought I would hastily put together one or two thoughts about you guys. And excuse me if I refer to my notes, which I don't usually do, but I've got to keep them straight. The internet's a wonderful thing, and the internet makes me a lot of money. Makes me quite a bit of money, not a lot. But it's growing. And why is it growing? It's growing because there are a lot of business people out there who use it, and they use it in ignorance. I make money from people who draft their own wills and cock it up. I make money from people who draft a partnership agreement using a template that they get off the internet and cock it up. And shareholders agreements and leases and all sorts of things. And the reason they cock it up is because they think, they don't think, that what they're pulling off the internet, off a website, has actually been drafted for them. When you go into a shoe shop, I guarantee that 99% of you will try the shoes on. I didn't. I'm the 1% that didn't, because I bought them before and I knew they fit, but they didn't. They pinch a bit, even though I've been wearing them now 6 months. It's the same with the documentation you get off the internet. It's not bespoke. It's there for anyone to use. And that use makes it general, it makes it non-specific, and potentially dangerous for you as business people. And for me as a lawyer, it can be really good news. If you leave aside the ag that can be caused between two of you who are at war because the document you thought you had that sorted out what you were trying to do no longer does that, and you've got a third party breathing down your neck, possibly demanding money. So, given that background, and it wasn't meant to scare, it's meant to set the thing in some kind of context, I thought I'd run through a few things that might be useful for you. Let's start with you as the employers. Probably most of you will be here as self-employed individuals, not in partnership or co-directors in a company. Yeah, I think that's possibly right. The most important thing for you as individuals is to have some paperwork in place that protects you as individuals, whether you are on your own, working in business, or whether you're working in partnership or as a co-director. What do I mean? If you are on your own, have you got a will? Because if you get hit by the number 9 bus, what happens to your business? What happens to the profits? I know 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 business people who shy away year after year from making a will, and they have families, and there's a possibility that that business person will die before her husband. On the other hand, there are people who are in partnership and they don't have a partnership agreement. I don't have a partnership agreement with my partner, but that's a long story. I didn't have a partnership agreement in place when my 2 partners that started the business with me in 1999 died, first in 1994 from acute alcohol poisoning, and secondly from heart attack on the golf course when we were having our golf day at Bolton. giving your partner of some 10 years mouth-to-mouth resuscitation with blood pouring out of his mouth from busted teeth and split gum is not pleasant. And having that thought, shit, we haven't got a partnership agreement in place, is an even worse one. So if you haven't got those kind of documents, think about it. Directors often own shares in companies, and if you own a share in a company, you own a percentage of the company. It may be 50%, it may be 90%, it may be 10%. But what is your place in the company vis-à-vis your shareholding, your worth in the company? Is it regulated? If you fall out with one of your co-directors or shareholders, what's your position? More likely, what if that person sells or dies and someone comes in and replaces them and takes over and you can't get on with them? What's your position then? Regulator. Another aspect of business that is often overlooked is that of employees. We've all been there, and possibly why we're sitting today around the table is we didn't like it, or like the people I was talking to last week had no choice in the matter. But they are entitled to a minimum at law. They're entitled to have a piece of paper that tells them what their position is, what they're there to do, what their pay is going to be, what the holiday entitlement is going to be, what happens when they're sick, and whether there's a pension in place. But that's the bare minimum, and I think I covered all the relevant points. That's the bare minimum. You should have in place a little bit more than that, because things change. What's the most important thing that you can have in a contract of employment with a colleague when you are his, her boss? The right to tell them that things have changed for the better or for the worse. And if you don't have that simple term in a contract of employment with one of your colleagues, and the business gets worse, so that you have to cut their hours, you don't have the flexibility to say to them, I'm afraid this is what I'm going to do. And if you've got several employees, as I have, and I've had to do it in the past, if you haven't got that term, then it's very difficult because you potentially have to make them redundant at a time when you can't afford it. All for the sake of not having the right clauses in the right documentation at the right time. Now, as I said, let's go back to the beginning. You can do all those things by going on the internet. But would you know, if you employ someone, that that one clause I've just been talking about is or isn't in the agreement you can pull off the internet? Possibly not. Because there's a very good chance by the time you've started reading that document and got to page 3 of it, you've lost the will to live, like most of my clients. But because people like me are trained to look at that kind of thing and go, yeah, that's there, that's there, that's there, and most important of all, that's there, I can tell you in 20 seconds whether you're wasting your £90 or £150 plus VAT fee on the internet and potentially causing yourselves horrendous difficulties. Now, I accept that lawyers charge lots of cash, but that's the kind of thing I will be able to do for you at roughly the cost of what it will cost you for the internet. Why? Because I use exactly the same templates, but from legal software sites. I know what's in them, and I can tell you before you ask the questions what you need to know. So, Charlie, there's a run through. Is that good enough? Okay. Any questions? Thank God for that. Well done.
Anyone got any questions before Barry swipes off out of that?